Over the years of doing wiring projects on the boat, I've learned some little tricks for making some good connections. Really, you don't want anything to take longer than necessary, and you don't want to have to do them later. These tricks will help with both. Hi there, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll share some DIY tips to make your next boat electrical project a little easier. Now, the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Fast Seas. Plan your next passage using fastseas.com. Whether you're after speed or comfort, Fast Seas will find the optimum route to your destination. Fast Seas, making weather routing simple. And be sure to use coupon code GALLEY for an exclusive 10% discount. Okay, when you live on a boat, it's only a matter of time before you find yourself tackling electrical projects. Maybe you're adding a new gadget, replacing old wiring, or in my case, I was installing a new propane solenoid. Over the years, I've picked up a handful of little tricks that make wiring jobs easier, neater, and safer. They're not the big things that you'll find in a manual. They're the small, practical tips I wish someone had told me before I ever picked up a crimper. Okay, let's start before you even strip your first wire. Make sure the work area is ready. Electrical projects generate a surprising amount of trash. Tiny bits of insulation, little wire ends, pieces of connectors, whatever. All those things love to scatter and end up in the soles of your feet or down in the bilges and plugging up pumps. I always keep a small bowl or even an empty can right next to me and cut wire ends over it and put anything else into it. It's a simple step, but it makes cleanup so much easier and keeps your cabin floor safe for bare feet. Remember, my boat's named Barefoot Girl. Don't see me in shoes. Now you're ready to start making connections. Here are some of the things that have saved me a lot of frustration. First off, if you're crimping two wires together and one of them is hard to reach, crimp the easy side first. That way you only have to wrestle with the difficult connection once. But if you attach the wire to the hard side first, and it's only, 3 inches longer, it's still going to be tough to reach. If you're dealing with tiny wire, the kind you often find on LED lights, you'll find sometimes it's too small for even the smallest connector you have on hand. Here's the trick. Strip double the normal length of insulation and fold the wire back on itself. That gives you twice the thickness and a solid crimp without hunting for specialty connectors. Another good habit is to check that the connector works on both wires before you crimp. Sometimes you'll have a mismatch in wire sizers. In that case, you need to have a step-down connector. Better to catch it before you've crimped one end, especially if you're dealing with short wires. And here's another thing that I discovered through trial and error. When you crimp, the tool will flatten the connector. If you're joining two wires in a butt connector, make both crimps in the same orientation. Otherwise, the flattened sides end up twisted against each other, making the joint bulkier and less tidy. Lining them up makes the connection slimmer and cleaner. Now, next one comes from necessity. I broke a wrist years ago and it never healed right. Sometimes I need both hands just to squeeze the crimper closed. That leaves 0 hands to keep the wire from slipping out of the connector. My solution is to add a little bit of tape to hold the wire in place against the connector. Not so that it's going to get caught in the crimp, but just so it holds it in place until the crimp is done. Not pretty, but it does work. Then you take it off afterwards. Now, of course, after you've crimped, always tug on the wire. Don't be shy. You don't want to be putting 10,000 pounds of pressure on it, but give it a firm pull. If it slips out, it's better to know right away than to later discover when the connection fails. Now, once you've got a good crimp, protect it. Either use connectors with built-in heat shrink or add your own shrink tubing. Even in areas that should never get wet, the extra protection against salt and humidity pays off. The shrink wrap helps prevent corrosion and keeps the joint from loosening. The only exception to this is when you're working near flammable materials like propane or diesel. Since you need heat to shrink the tubing, you don't want to risk a fire. In those cases, use another method such as wrapping with electrical tape to protect the connection. Another lesson I learned the hard way: good tools really do matter. For a long time, I made do with budget crimpers and strippers. Then I spent a little bit more for a top-rated set, and I could not believe the difference. The crimps were cleaner, the tool felt better in my hand, the work went a lot faster because it was easier to get the crimp, it was easier to do the stripping, it was easier to do everything. Sometimes spending a bit more upfront really saves you frustration for years to come. And finally, always double check that the wire size you're using is big enough for the load it will carry. Undersized wire can mean equipment doesn't work properly, or worse, if it's really undersized, it can start a fire. I keep a copy of our 12-volt wiring size chart. We've got one, it's in the show notes. We created it so it was easy to keep with your electrical tools. You can find them in other places too. Electrical projects can feel intimidating. They were when we began cruising. But seriously, a few strong, small tricks, they get a whole lot easier. Keep your workspace clean, take care of your crimps, plan your connections, use the right tools. It's going to be a lot easier. And here's hoping your next project goes smoothly. Thanks for listening to our podcast, and help others find us. Tell them about us, or leave a review in your favorite podcast app.